Welcome to True Echo, where every story echoes truth, heart, and the kind of moments that change lives. Today's story will stop you in your tracks. It begins with a piano, a forgotten face, and a melody so powerful it made even the guards cry. Stay until the end, you won't forget what you hear next. The Grand Ridge Station wasn't made for beauty, it was made for movement. A place people passed through, not into. But on the first Friday of every month, something rare happened there, open mic night. Lights twinkled. Teenagers with nervous eyes tuned their guitars. A ukulele girl with electric blue hair rehearsed by the cafe. But nobody noticed the old man. He didn't look like a performer. His coat was brown wool, fraying at the cuffs. Shoes worn. Beard graying unevenly. He leaned quietly near the upright piano by track 7, like a forgotten statue. The security guard squinted. "Sir, if you're not on the list, you need to step back." The old man nodded gently, stepping into the shadows of a column. The host, Trevor, sharp jaw, slick words, tapped his mic. "All right, let's get this show started. And remember, tip your baristas, not your chairs." He was all show, all surface. The acts followed. A teen crooned a heartbreak song. A girl sang about coffee and capitalism. A comic bombed spectacularly. Polite applause, mostly out of obligation. But the man stayed. Watched. Listened. Every act. Like the notes mattered. Then Trevor spotted him again. "We've got a mystery guest," he mocked. "Unless you're Ray Charles reincarnated, step away from the piano, Pops." The old man stepped forward. "Just a few minutes. If that's all right." His voice rasped like wine through pine. Trevor smirked, shrugged to the sound guy. 2 minutes. Don't put us to sleep." The man sat. Removed his gloves. Hands neither soft nor calloused, just, lived in. He touched the chipped piano gently. Paused. Closed his eyes. Then a single note. Not loud. Not flashy. But something about it made the barista freeze mid-pour. Then another. And the entire station fell silent. The music wasn't anything you could hum along to. It wasn't flashy or fast. It was slower than most people dared to play, every note deliberate, every pause longer than expected, yet never awkward. It was like the man was speaking through silence just as much as through sound. He played not like a musician performing but like a father grieving, like a soul confessing. Commuters stopped mid-step. A woman on a phone call let it fall from her hand. A little boy sat cross-legged in the middle of the marble floor, eyes wide, unmoving. Trevor stood frozen at the mic, confused. He looked at the man, at this nobody in a dusty coat, and for the first time all night, he had no clever words. Behind the janitor's cart, a girl in a beanie gasped. Her name was Elise. She was 19, a conservatory student who had come to listen, not perform. Her professor had told her she'd lost the emotion behind her technique, that she played like she was trying to pass an exam, not tell a story. She didn't believe it, until now. As the man's right hand climbed the keys, his left rumbled like a memory, rich and slow. The piano responded to him like an old friend, weary and aching. Then, quietly, a folded letter slipped from his coat and fluttered to the ground. Elise saw it. She stepped forward, carefully picked it up. It was addressed in fragile, looping handwriting. She opened it. The ink had bled in spots, like it had been cried on. "To the boy I lost too soon," it began. She read on, her lips trembling. "I never finished this piece while you were alive. I couldn't." Every note felt like a lie. But maybe now, maybe it can say what I never could. She looked at the man, back to the letter, and then she broke. Not quietly. Not gently. Her sob hit like thunder, honest, full, shaking her whole body. She stepped forward and knelt by the piano, placing the letter beside him like an offering. He didn't stop playing. But a shiver ran through his shoulders. He knew. And the music changed. Deepened. As if he, too, had been waiting for someone to read that letter aloud, without saying a word. When the piece finally ended, the last note hung so soft it barely existed. Then nothing. The kind of nothing that feels like a cathedral. The kind of silence that makes you wonder if your heart is still beating. And then, a child clapped. Just once. Then again. The sound was awkward, uneven, but real. It broke the spell. More people joined in. Some teared up. Others just stood, hands at their sides, unsure what to do with their emotions. The man didn't bask in the moment. He didn't even look up. He stood slowly, bowed his head, and turned to leave. Elise whispered, "Was it your son?" He stopped. And nodded. That's when she noticed his eyes. They weren't full of tears, they were dry. But behind them was a pain so vast it looked ancient. Not raw, but deep. Carved into the man himself. "Wait," she called again. "What's your name?" He paused in the shifting crowd. "Does it matter?" he said softly. The music already told it. And with that, he vanished into the crowd like smoke rising from a candle just extinguished. Elise sat on the floor by the piano, the letter still resting beside her. She didn't move for a long time. The buzz of the station had returned, slowly at first, like the world had to relearn how to make noise. But inside Elise, everything stayed quiet. Not the absence of sound kind of quiet, no, this was different. This was the kind of quiet that settles deep, like the air before a storm or the hush of snowfall over graveyards. She had no idea what to do with the letter. It felt sacred. Too personal to keep, too powerful to discard. So she folded it gently and slipped it into her violin case. Back near the coffee shop, Trevor stood like a man who had forgotten his lines. The crowd that once looked to him for direction now barely glanced his way. Someone had posted a video online within minutes. By the time Elise left the station, the clip had already racked up over 8,000 views. The comments were piling up faster than anyone could read. "Who is this man?" I cried in the middle of a Starbucks. "What just happened?" Someone said his name is Elliot. Elliot something. Elise paused at that one. Elliot. Why did that name catch on something inside her? That night, she stayed up researching, flipping through dusty articles and old musical archives. She didn't know what she was looking for, until she found it. An old article in a forgotten corner of the internet. Faded headline, pixelated photo. Elliot Brandt's final performance, Grief in Vienna. Her heart stopped. She stared at the photo. The same eyes. Younger, cleaner, but unmistakable. The same haunted stillness. Elliot Brandt. The Elliot Brandt. A once famous composer who had debuted a piece called for silence 20 years ago after the death of his only son, and then vanished. No more interviews. No concerts. No recordings. Music schools treated him like myth. Some said he was dead. Others said he'd gone mad. But now, Elise knew the truth. He hadn't vanished. He had just gone silent. The next morning, Elise skipped class and went back to the station. She needed to see the piano again. To feel the space. As she approached, she noticed something strange. A single white rose now rested on top of the piano. Beside it, a sketch, charcoal on napkin. It showed the man from last night, hands hovering over the keys. Someone had written beneath it, "Thank you for reminding me why I used to love music." She sat on the bench where he'd played and touched one key. It trembled under her finger. And just like that, her tears returned. She'd studied music her whole life. But nothing she'd played, not Bach, not Brahms, not even the improvisations she'd once dared as a kid, had made her feel what he made her feel last night. That was the kind of musician she wanted to be. Not famous. Not perfect. Just, real. 2 days later, Elise stood outside her professor's office, heart thudding. She handed him the letter. He scanned it slowly. Then looked up at her, eyes wide. "Where did you get this?" "He dropped it at the open mic," she whispered. Her professor stood in stunned silence. "Do you know whose handwriting this is?" Elliot Brandt," she said, not entirely sure if saying his name aloud would make it more real. He nodded. "I haven't seen this in almost 20 years. He took a breath, sat down, and held the letter like it might crumble. "Elise, do you understand what this means?" "I think I do," she said quietly. "But I don't think it's over." He stared at her a moment longer. Then said, "Then find him." Elise didn't sleep much that week. The melody from the station haunted her, not like a ghost, but like an unfinished sentence. It played on loop in her head, even in silence. Especially in silence. Her violin felt different now, heavier, more sacred. Every time she touched the strings, she felt like she was trying to speak his language, Elliot's language, made of breath, memory, and ache. She started retracing her steps, talking to everyone who had been at the station that night. The barista remembered the man. "Didn't order anything," she said. "Just stood near the piano for a while. Like he was waiting for permission to breathe." Security had no name. The guard who had first turned him away, Officer Miles, simply muttered, "Didn't realize what I was pushing away. I thought he was homeless, until he played. Then I thought he was. I don't know. Something else." Elise kept coming back to the station every evening, hoping lightning might strike twice. That he might return. That he might play again. But each night, the bench by the piano remained empty. Until the 4th night. She saw him. Not at the piano. Not near the platform. But seated quietly at a bench by the far exit, hood pulled low, hands resting calmly on a folded notebook. She didn't hesitate. She walked up, heart hammering like a timpani solo. "Elliot," she said. He looked up. No surprise in his eyes. Just, recognition. "Elise," he said softly. She froze. "You know my name?" He gave the ghost of a smile. "You're the one who cried over my letter. Hard to forget." She sat beside him, breath shaking. "You're Elliot Brandt." "I was," he said. "No. You are." He didn't argue. Just looked down at his notebook. "Why are you looking for me?" She stared at her hands. "Because I heard the truth in your music. And I think I've been playing lies for years." That made him glance up. "You're not lying. You're just not listening yet." "To what?" He tapped his chest. "To that." She sat in silence. He continued. "Most musicians learn technique. Then theory. Then maybe heart, if they survive both. But some start with heart, lose it, and spend the rest of their lives trying to find it again." He paused. "That's what happened to me." She pulled out the letter from her coat pocket. "I don't know if you meant to drop this." He looked at it, then away. "I did. Just didn't expect someone like you to pick it up. Someone like me. Young. Bright. Not burdened yet." Her voice caught. "You think I'm not burdened?" He turned. Their eyes locked. And for the first time, he saw it. She wasn't a starry-eyed student. She was a survivor, of loss, of silence, of being told she was never enough unless she was flawless. "What did you lose?" he asked, softer now. "My mom," she said. 3 years ago. She taught me violin. But after she died, I stopped playing anything that mattered. I just played what people expected. Elliot nodded. Then you understand. She swallowed. Teach me. Not scales. Not posture. Teach me how to say something without words. He stared ahead for a long time. Then finally spoke. Meet me here tomorrow. After rush hour. Bring your violin. The next day, 8:15 p.m. Elise arrived to find him already seated at the piano. No crowd. No mic. Just her, him, and the quiet hum of the station's fluorescent lights. He didn't say hello. Just opened his notebook and nodded once. She tuned silently, hands trembling. Play something, he said. Anything. She chose a piece she knew well. One she'd performed a dozen times. Technically perfect. Emotionally flat. When she finished, he didn't applaud. He just looked at her. That was beautiful, he said. But who were you trying to impress? She didn't answer. Try again, he said. But this time, don't try to impress me. Don't impress anyone. Just say what you can't say out loud. So she did. She closed her eyes. Thought of her mother. Of that last hospital room. Of the things she never said. And when she played again, something cracked. The notes came raw, halting. But they were honest. When she opened her eyes, Elliot's head was bowed. His fingers were gently moving across the notebook in his lap. He looked up. Now that was music. In the following weeks, the station became their classroom. No whiteboards, no lectures, just a worn piano, a violin case, and two people trying to speak through something other than words. Elise came every evening after her classes, sometimes earlier when she couldn't focus on anything else. The world around them moved in haste, trains arriving, heels clicking across the tile, but in their corner by track 7, time slowed. Elliot didn't teach her notes. He asked questions. What does sorrow sound like when it's not angry? What if forgiveness had a melody? What if you didn't worry about being understood, only about being honest? Sometimes, Elise would answer with her bow. Other times, she would just stare, tears threatening to spill, until she found the sound hiding beneath her ribs. You don't need technique to speak the truth, Elliot said one evening. But if you know how to speak, technique makes it fly farther. By their third week, Elise had filled an entire notebook. Not with sheet music, she still hesitated to commit anything to staff lines, but with phrases. Chords. Doodles. Questions. Memories. Her own grief had become a paintbrush. And Elliot? He was changing too. His coat was still the same, but his shoulders were straighter. He didn't linger in shadows anymore. One night, after a particularly raw duet, he took a piece of paper from his notebook and handed it to Elise. It was the unfinished melody he'd played that first night. The one that had stopped the station. I want you to finish it with me, he said. Elise's breath caught. Me? You heard it. You felt it. Now speak back to it. Elise spent the next 2 nights writing. Erasing. Weeping. Rewriting. Every note she penned felt like a conversation, like she was sitting across from the man in the brown coat again, reading his pain and responding with her own. When she brought the finished draft to him, he said nothing for a long time. Just stared at the page. Then at her. It's not what I would have written, he said softly. Her stomach dropped. But it's what I needed to hear. She smiled through the tightness in her throat. Together, they played it that night. The first and only time they performed the full version, just for themselves. No cameras. No audience. Only the echoes of a memory rewritten. It was not perfect. There were slips. Slight hesitations. A cracked high note. A missed dynamic. But when they finished, Elliot leaned back on the bench and whispered, "That's the first time I've finished something since my son died." The next morning, Elise opened her door to find a small package on the floor. No label. Inside was a bound set of handwritten sheet music. For the Ones Who Stayed. Composed by Elliot Brandt and Elise Moreau. Beneath it, a note. "The stage is yours now. I'll be listening, from somewhere near." Her hands shook as she held it. She wept, not with sadness, but with something else. Responsibility. Gratitude. A strange, aching joy. That Friday night, the station was packed. Word had spread. The video of Elliot's original performance had resurfaced, gaining over 1 million views in days. Music students. Commuters. Tourists. They all stood quietly around the old upright piano under the station lights. Trevor stood nearby, humbled and silent. Elise stepped out of the crowd with her violin. She didn't introduce herself. She just played. The finished version. The one they wrote together. And the station stopped again. Not just to listen, but to remember. The final note of Elise's violin hovered in the air like breath suspended between two people who didn't know how to say goodbye. She let her bow fall gently away from the string and lowered her hand, but didn't move from the bench. The silence in Grand Ridge Station felt alive, reverent, thick with something heavier than applause. No one dared speak. Then came the sound. Not a clap. Not a cheer. A single breath, shaky, raw, from somewhere in the crowd. A soft gasp, then another. A woman pressed her hands over her mouth, tears streaming down her cheeks. A man removed his hat. A little boy whispered, "Why does my heart hurt, Mommy?" Elise didn't smile. She didn't bow. She simply placed her violin down beside her and let the silence do what music had taught her it could, say what words could not. Somewhere in the crowd, unnoticed at first, Elliot stood. No longer in disguise. No coat, no shadowed corner. Just himself. His face held something soft now, peace, maybe. Or acceptance. He didn't move toward her. Didn't need to. She felt him. After a long pause, he turned and slipped away again, vanishing behind the crowd as quietly as he'd entered her life. But this time, he left something behind. On the bench where she'd played, someone found a sheet of music. Unfinished. In the corner, scrawled in that same gentle, trembling script, were 3 words. "Finish this. Together." Elise closed her eyes and held the page to her chest. She knew what it meant. He wasn't giving her an ending. He was giving her a beginning. In the days that followed, the station piano became more than an instrument, it became an altar. Musicians left folded notes. Drawings. Flowers. A young girl left a tiny stuffed bear with a tag that read, "For the music man who made my daddy cry." Elise returned every night. She didn't always play. Sometimes she just listened. Sometimes others played, awkwardly, clumsily, but with heart. One of the guards who once scolded Elliot now sat down each Sunday to play a hymn his mother used to hum. A child tapped a lullaby with 2 fingers. No one laughed. The station had changed. So had Elise. Her professors noticed it. Her classmates whispered about it. Her tone had shifted. Her compositions were no longer exercises. They were conversations, aching, honest, unfinished. Then came the invitation. A letter from the Prague Conservatory. They had heard about the performance. About the composition. About Elliot Brandt's reappearance. They wanted to commission a new piece from him. A winter concert. A memorial. Something sacred. Elliot invited Elise to join him. "I want this to be the last piece I write," he said. "But I don't want to write it alone." She met him the next night at the same station bench. Snow had started to fall outside, drifting in soft, delicate spirals like ash from a dying fire. He handed her a folded page. "I wrote the motif," he said. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "But it's unfinished." "I know," he replied, looking her directly in the eyes. "That's why I gave it to you." That night, they played in silence. No audience. Just them. Just the snow tapping against the glass. And the music they would carry into the next chapter. The Prague concert hall was older than any room Elise had ever stepped into. Its ceiling stretched like a cathedral's ribs, carved from stone that had witnessed revolutions, requiems, and redemption. Gold trim caught the candlelight in fractured halos, while velvet-draped balconies curved like quiet smiles around the stage. It was a place made for memory. And tonight, it would hold Elliot's last piece. They had spent weeks composing it, her in New York, him tucked away in a quiet flat outside the city. Pages went back and forth like letters between distant friends. Each melody was a message. Each harmony, a hand held across silence. The piece grew not in perfection, but in presence. The winter hymn, they called it. Not a eulogy. Not a farewell. A hymn. For the ones who stayed. The night of the performance, Elise stood backstage with her violin case open and her hands trembling, not with fear, but with something deeper. Reverence. She could hear the audience beyond the curtains. Murmured Czech, accented English. Hundreds of hearts waiting to be moved. Elliot stood beside her in a tailored black suit, one button loose at the wrist, his posture slightly stooped now, but his eyes sharp and clear. "I never thought I'd stand on a stage again," he murmured. "You're not standing alone," Elise whispered back. He smiled, "Not the kind you give to strangers, but the kind that says thank you for being the bridge back to myself." The house lights dimmed. The murmurs hushed. They stepped into the spotlight together. At first, the room didn't move. As if the air had forgotten how to breathe. Then came a slow recognition, a ripple through the rows. Someone gasped. Someone else whispered, "It's him." Elliot bowed his head. Elise nodded once. Then they took their places, Elliot at the grand piano, Elise at center stage with her bow poised like a question. The first notes fell gently. Not bold, not grand. They stepped into the room like light filtering through a frosted window. Elliot's chords echoed softly, like a man telling a story he hadn't spoken aloud in decades. And Elise answered with her violin, hesitant at first, then clearer, a voice rising through memory. The piece moved in movements. Sorrow. Remembrance. Awakening. Hope. It was never loud. But it was never weak. By the time they reached the final measures, Elise drew her bow across the string in a way she never had before. Not for applause. Not for mastery. For him. For the boy in the letter. For every note that had lived in silence too long. When the last vibration faded, the room didn't move. Didn't speak. Then someone in the upper balcony stood and placed a hand on their chest. And the rest followed. No cheers. No roars. Just hundreds of people standing in silence. Not stunned. Transformed. After the performance, Elise found Elliot backstage in a quiet room lit by a single brass lamp. He sat with his eyes closed, head tilted toward the ceiling as if still hearing the last note. "You okay?" she asked. He opened his eyes. Smiled faintly. "I didn't expect to still be breathing," he said. She laughed through a tear. "You didn't just breathe. You sang." He looked at her, eyes full of something that felt like peace. Then he handed her a small envelope. "I wrote you something," he said. She unfolded it later that night in her hotel room. Elise. "I once believed silence was safer than sound. That if I just stopped speaking through music, I'd stop feeling the ache of everything I lost. But you showed me that silence can also carry love, if you know how to listen to it. You weren't my student. You were my mirror. My echo. My answer. The hymn was my final gift. But your music, that's the legacy. Keep it going. Finish the next movement. Pass it on. With everything. E. Elliot passed away a month later. Not in a hospital. Not surrounded by cameras or fanfare. In a quiet room in Prague, listening to a recording of the Winter Hymn. He left everything to music schools, community programs, children who'd never been told their broken notes were worth playing. And to Elise, he left his final sketchbook. The title on the first page read, "To Begin Again." Some stories don't shout. They whisper. But they echo forever. Elliot Brandt's return wasn't about reclaiming fame, it was about reclaiming his voice. And in Elise, he found not just a partner, but a continuation. A future. You don't have to be perfect to be powerful. You just have to play what's real. If this story moved you, share it. Leave a comment. Tell us what silence you've been holding, and what song might live inside it. And subscribe to True Echo, where stories aren't just told, they're felt.